I've got 4 copies of Biték from Umdetran and 2 copies of Transparent Moment. Biték from Umdetran and Transparent Moment, but my review today is specifically on Biték. So let's dive into it. Welcome to P English Literature, a YouTube channel that conveys Amazon, Goodreads, blog, and video book reviews coupled with interviews with authors. It's a perfect channel for book lovers, authors, and writers generally. P English Literature, the exact channel for you and me. Hi guys, welcome back to my channel at P English Literature. If you have not subscribed to this channel, or if today is the first time of watching this video, I want to urge you to please click on the subscribe button over there so you can get notified anytime I release new videos. Thank you very much. So today is another episode of another video book review, and I'm talking about this book right in front of me, Biték from Umdetran by Massocki Ma Massocki. This book is actually very interesting, very interesting. So before I move into my review on this book, I would like to notify you that this book is scheduled for launch on September 1st. So you can, if you like this video book review, you can place a copy ahead of this book because it's actually going to be released in September. So I'm making this review in anticipation of the release date in September. Biték, it's actually a story that moved into colonization. It's a real life story of Biték itself, and Biték Bimia is the grandfather of the author Massocki Ma Massocki. So basically this book was written by the author in favor of his grandfather, who was an hero and someone whom death really ran for several times. Before I move into my review on this book, I would like to read to you the synopsis that is described at the back page of this book. So I'm going to read to you the synopsis, and also I'm going to read to you about the author page. Then I would dive into my review on Biték. So the synopsis now. What would you do if you couldn't die, no matter how much danger you are in? If you couldn't stop until your life mission is accomplished, how would you negotiate divine mandate and human adventures? Biték is a condensed cultural tale of a man with a divine assignment to save his village from the hands of colonization. This is an expository account of European colonization, religious belief, laws, blatant violation, and historical aggression, geared towards eradicating the cultural identity of Biték's African history. Moreover, this book demonstrates the developed political, social, spiritual, and religious system Biték's African ancestors had before violation of their natural right in the hands of colonization, right in all kinds instead. As an exhumation of a great African tradition buried by European colonization, Biték presents a vibrant appeal for the protection and preservation of the world heritage. I actually love this book. I so much admire it. I left a review of this book yesterday or 2 days ago on my blog post. The link to that review is included in the description part of this video. And my review on blog post is actually kind of an educational review on this book, because I thought this book is something that is good for the preservation of cultural heritage for both, for Africans, but specifically to the Cameroonians, and some tales that has to do with that from the perception or from the angle of the Igbo culture and tradition. This book is actually a real-life story, is a non-fiction story of Biték himself, And Biték is somebody that was ordained by ancestors to to fulfill a lot of mandate to probably save the his people, the Ndok Box people of the Bas resident people of the Cameroonian, and himself and his family. So before I move into my full review on this book, I would like to read to you the about the author page that was inscribed also at the back page of this book. So Massocki Ma Massocki is a columnist and activist aligned to Pan-Africanism. He writes for digital and print news media and regional and international organizations. His first book, The Pride of an African Migrant, was published in 2020 by Pierced Rock Press. So that's that about the author of this book. Starting from the dedication page of this book that spoke a little bit about the birth of the author Massocki Ma Massocki in a kind of an ancestral manner. It's actually very, spiritual, because one of the parts I find very intriguing and I find like more or less like an adventurous art for people of our contemporary time is a part whereby his grandfather appeared to a mother during her pregnancy, instructing her to on how she's gonna go about the delivery and the discovery of the snail shell at their backyard, and also the instruction of her to bathe on a grave by the help of a patriarch is something I find very, very deep into African spirituality, and something as much more to the preservation of cultural heritage, more specifically to the the Cameroonians. The story of Biték actually began by the first invasion of the German into the environment of, I think, the environment where Biték actually dwelled during this time. I think it's the Ndok people resident. And this story began because after the invasion of the German, they had to leave the Bambibo forest and move into the village center. It was on this basis that Biték, together with his family, left everything they had in the village and run for their life to seek refuge at the village center. So when they get to the village center, they couldn't, there wasn't really food available for them to survive, and all they have to do is to eat kola nut, and that's one of the reasons why they actually named the particular place Tome, and they have been referred to as the Tome people at that time. When the German invaded their land, they caused a lot of massacre. They took some for for slavery, and it was just so bad on them. That's one of the reasons why they actually fled for their lives. So when they get to the village center, Biték began a new life here, and before the point whereby he disobeyed the rule of the land, until the point whereby Biték fell in love with the wife of the chief, which was Kindab. So at this point, Kindab and Biték always find time together to talk in the market central whenever the wife is coming to get meat. And from this moment, Biték expressed his love towards Kidab, and Kidab was a little bit much more interested in him. And from this point, Biték, in a kind of an unfair manner, would sneak into the house of the chief at night to make love with his wife, which I consider very, very wrong. So at this point, this scenario actually keep reoccurring time to time, that Biték would sneak into the house of the chief to make love with Kidab, until the point whereby he was caught, and the chief actually instructed that he should be killed and his meat should be brought to him for a meat for his leopard. One of the parts we actually find very interesting about this book is a part whereby Biték was going to be circumcised by his father. I was quite very shocked, because it is quite funny to me, and I was a little bit contemplative that why should he have to wait to that point whereby he is now a teenager before they move on to the circumcision. Some other parts also spoke about the cultural heritage more specific to the people of Cameroon during this time, because it's actually an old time tale. And one of the part I actually find very interesting was the point whereby they would have to wrestle to determine manhood by wrestling, by circumcision, and also by the backboning machete. This backboning machete, I think I've heard about it some times ago, has been one of the culture of some people in the African world. But when I read about it in this book, I was a little bit quite, introspective. I was shocked that, oh yeah, it really happens, and that Biték's story was a little bit going to unveil this stuff. Even though the German afterward find this backboning machete quite barbaric, and they had to forbid it for the people and the resident of the Cameroonians. This story actually delved into more of colonization and also more specifically told in the tale, more specific to Biték itself. I also learned some things about the Bassa people culture. I also learned about the Libobo tale, whereby the people hid themselves when they were trying to escape from their enemies during that time. So this particular cave is called the Lituba cave, where they actually escaped themselves at next time. I love this book because it is actually educative. Some part of it drive into the culture of this people, of the Cameroonian people more specifically, and how it actually, this book actually reminded me of things, Chinua Achebe's Things Fall Apart. This part specifically reminded me of Chinua Achebe's Things Fall Apart, because that part also spoke a little bit about colonization, about African culture more specific to the Igbo people. So the story of Bitek went on to the point whereby he had to escape his village in order to escape from the death pronouncement by the chief, since he had gone to involve himself in an unlawful act with Kidap, the chief's second wife. So on this basis, Bitek ran to the capital city of Cameroon, and when he also felt unsafe in Cameroon, he had to run towards the southern part of Nigeria. So when he ran towards the southern part of Nigeria, he arrived at a particular river, and the river is actually a big one that he needs to swim to get to another section of Nigeria. So he had to offer prayer of forgiveness, and that his ancestral should, help him as he's going to jump into this big, large river, so he should come up or out alive. So after the prayer, Bitek jumped into the river, and the point whereby a sudden slab of wood showed up on the river, and the instance whereby Bitek had to sat on it and eventually take him to the riverbank, it's something I consider very interesting, and I was like of my perception that, oh yeah, the spirit of his forefathers were with him. So when Bitek arrived in Port Harcourt in Nigeria, he had to suffer a little bit because he couldn't understand English and some other language as spoken by the resident of Port Harcourt at that time. So on this basis, Bitek had to rely on the food that the people or passers-by have to give him before he ultimately gained employed by one British Nigerian resident, rather, Mr. Scott. So Bitek worked with Mr. Scott as a gardener and a gatekeeper, and in this environment she met Amadi. Amadi is actually one of Mr. Scott's maid, I think a cook thereabout, and much more specific, anytime that no one is at home and anytime that they are together, working together, Kid Bitek would always want to help Amadi in one or two chores, and sometimes she would accept. And it's on this basis they get to fall in love with each other and ultimately get married. So when Bitek was a little bit, wanting to ask Amadi for her hand in marriage, because he doesn't want to fall prey, because he remember what happened to himself in the village, which led to his ultimate flight from Cameroon. So he's trying to avoid this and wouldn't like it to repeat itself again, and so wanted to do things in a kind of a legal manner. On this basis, Bitek then instructed to be wife Amadi that he would like to know the step involved in getting married, and Amadi told him that she would have to pay my bride price, and from there we can organize a ceremony and get married. So Biték did this, and eventually they get married and they have two children, even though they lived with Mr. Scott for the period of 15 years. Everything turned around drastically for Biték when the oracle during the time of the New Yam festival selected him to be offered to the god of the land, selected him to be sacrificed so that his meat will be held together to celebrate the New Yam festival's important god. When the message reached to Amadi, she started crying and was trying to be of the opinion that if she forbid his husband being offered as a sacrifice to the god, and instructed Bitek that they should run away from Port Harcourt. So on this basis, Bitek, together with his wife and two children, with the help of the British Nigerian resident Mr. Scott, move into their van and run towards the Nigerian Cameroonian border so that Bitek can flee from the barbaric law of the oracle who had offered that his meat should be sacrificed for the celebration of the New Yam festival. So in this point, Bitek suddenly announced to his wife and two children that he won't be taking them to Cameroon and that he would like to leave them with Mr. Scott in Nigeria, and that he promised them that he's going to return to them and have them. I found this part very, very heartbroken, very harrowing, and heart-wrenching. I was even of the opinion that I sort of developed some kind of a bad likeness towards Bitek at this point, because that decision is actually a bad one. It's an adventurous decision, and it's one of those points that I found very empathetic to Amadi, because I could feel how I could empathize with her and see how she would look like, because it's actually a bad incident. And back then in those days, there wasn't mean of communication so that Bitek would have communicated with his children or wife. But that was how Bitek left them in together with Mr. Scott and never returned to them. And that's actually one of the reasons why the author, Massocki Ma Massocki, wrote this book. He noted in one of the front page that he wrote this book so that he will be able to connect with his family in Nigeria. But I was of the opinion that this incident happened far back in the olden days, and by now, at the time that this review is published, Amadi would have grown very old, and the two children would have probably have grandchildren and even great grandchildren. But I actually hope that through the story of this book, Bitek, the author, will be able to connect with his family in Nigeria. So when Bitek arrived in Cameroon again, he has actually been ordained by the ancestral to save his people, and he has been pronounced as a man to whom death will flee from several times. When Bitek arrived in his village, he is actually old at that time, and he had to marry another wife, and which later or ultimately bear 12 children, and which the last one was Massocki, the author father name. So Bitek still in Cameroon is one of the things that I consider very enthralling, engrossing, and quite absorbing, because from this part he actually started to fulfill his mandate for saving his people. He reached out to the chief, who at this time was already old, and his second wife, to whom Bitek once fled Cameroon, was sent into exile. She was sent away, and I felt very, the story is actually very empathetic. It's quite emotional, because at each point, at each plot and characterization of a part, you would feel, you would just mull over it and start thinking, because it's actually a real life story, unlike fiction tale. This book is actually a non-fictional tale, and I really admire it. I love the story. I love the tale as told by the perception of the author and some other things encapsulated in it. So from this point in time, the story keep unfolding, unfolding, and unfolding. A copy of this book can be found on Amazon. I left a link in the description part of this video if you would like to get a copy for yourself. The ending part of this book spoke about Bitek's fate to save his people. And this part I actually find it very interesting because he's the only one who was able to provide the position whereby this particular man who the Cameroonian armed forces were looking for his grave so that they can stop the killing of the Marquisite at this time. I will resist from revealing more about this book because I don't like to so to speak about a book to the very end. I always love my review to be a spoiler free. Even though I would have wanted BTEC to be a spoiler review, but I think it would be good to narrate the story in a book to the entirety. And I just love to leave it in a swift manner so that I'm able to leave the watcher and the viewer of this review in a state of hell, wanting to get a copy for themselves. The book is actually very interesting. It delves more into African colonization and much more about the tale of the people who have actually been windswept by colonization of the European and also the German. Cameroon is a country that was colonized twice, or that was colonized firstly by the German before the aftermath placement of the country by the League of Nations into three-quarter of it occupying France and one quarter of it to Britain. That's one of the reasons why we have French-speaking speakers and English speakers in Cameroon. There are a lot of tales encapsulated in this book, a lot of culture encapsulated in this book. I think this book is something that should be worth reading for secondary schools and even university students in Cameroon and some other neighboring countries. I shall resist revealing more, and I would like the watcher of this video book review to check out a copy of themselves for themselves on Amazon. It's actually available for purchase and pre-order currently on Amazon. Thank you. My subscribers target for the month of June is to reach 650, and I'm currently below that. More reason why I'm urging you, if this is the first time you're watching this video book review, or if you've not subscribed to this channel, to please click on the subscribe button over there. Also like and share this video in order to promote this book, Biték from Umdetran. This book is actually very interesting, and I'm urging you to please go out there and get a copy of Biték from Umdetran by Massocki Ma Massocki. I'm sure you're really gonna enjoy reading it. Thank you for watching my video book review on Biték from Umdetran by Massocki Ma Massocki. It's actually an enthralling real-life story of Biték coupled with colonization. Thank you so much. See you in my next video.